How would you describe your relationship with music? What does music mean to you?
Music is kind of my sacred space, like the space I, go for expression, the space I go for release, the space I go to feel whole. Um, that can look like a lot of different things. That can look like listening to something that is nostalgic for me. That can look like creating without really much in mind, but just like being there to create. That can look like working on a specific project, that can be collaboration. But overall, it's community. Really, music to me is community and the realm that it brings. Um, in that space for me, whether it be sharing my own work, like feeling a feeling that the artist, when I'm listening, is trying to, tell a story, take you on a journey, etc. Um, but or like collaborating with vocalists or friends. That's really for me what it's about.
Is that why you put so much time and energy into the literal space where you create your studio? Like you put
Yes.
is that related to
Yes.
that relationship?
Totally, yes. I mean, everything from the instruments to the routing to just like making my workflow optimized. Yes, and just having things that inspire me and having a more uh, like bright space. I know a lot of people like to create in the dark, but I have like a lot of neons and some lava lamps, and my speakers are purple, and my panels are teal. So it's all kind of mindfully curated. I joke that it's kind of like my little underwater aquarium because I also live, in like a loft. So that's a little struggle at times with acoustics, but we've done a really great job with treatment and movable treatment. So, and a cloud and all of that good stuff.
So if it's an aquarium, does every like synth have like a different, is it like a different fish or aquatic creature that you can
I don't think I've taken it that far, but
That's the
I'm
next step.
definitely trying to go with like, kind of the like blues, greens, purples
Hmm.
in space.
Cool.
Yeah.
Um, so what initially sparked your interest in music? What was the first like, I guess what would be the first time you like felt yourself within that space would be the way to word it.
Okay, are you saying as a producer or as like me
Like
as a whole, like experiencing
the
something,
whole
the whole
experiencing like
thing?
all the way back to the beginning, like the first time when you're like, oh, this is kind of cool, you know.
I mean, okay, so my dad used to have a classic car, and I would get the opportunity with him on Sundays sometimes to go out in that classic car, and he would just play tons of oldies. And I mean, this is so just kind of cliche, I suppose, but we would drive down the beach and the oldies would be playing. And I was like, oh, this is like good. I love this. But I also knew that this was like not my music. This was his music, and this was like his connection. And I've been around music in my family for like a long time because of my dad. Like uh, family members, like my uncle managed the Scorpions. Um, so that kind of style of like harder,
Scorpions like rock you like a hurricane.
yes.
That's so cool.
So that like I was like we were always listening to stuff in that realm. Um, so but then like when I kind of started finding my own taste with friends and music, of course it started in kind of the young pop era of like the 90s and all the boy bands and the Spice Girls and the Britney Spears, of course, right? But that still kind of wasn't my groove, and that, I kept kind of trying to experiment with that. But I went on a vacation and I met some other kids, and we traded some CDs or tapes. I can't remember at the time. I feel like I was like probably 10 or 11. So probably tapes. maybe barely CDs. Um, I'm dating myself. But I got given an Orbital CD. And so that kind of cracked open a whole new realm for me. And I was like, what is this sound? And then I found The Prodigy, and then I found Crystal Method. And then I was just on Napster downloading all the things.
All the things.
And that's when I was like, wow, I like, how is this made? What is this? Like, then like later found a lot of movies and whatnot with similar sounds from that era. And it kind of just took off from there.
So it sounds like the oldies and stuff that you listen to your dad didn't really like spark a sense of curiosity the way that the electronic music did, and it's like that makes sense, on a certain point, because it's like, it's like they're singing and playing guitar and playing drums, which, you make sense in a way to where in a way that electronic music doesn't. So was that like curiosity, like what kind of like hooked you initially, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I mean, even um I just felt like I had never heard something like that, even in like, pop music or the radio, which was all being, produced in similar fashion, with the same kind of, some were bands, but some had producers. And um I just realized like I need to dig into this more. And I mean, there wasn't as great of algorithms and all of the things, so you really had to, dig in there. And I just remember like finding all of these things, thinking I had found the holy grail, and no one else like that I would show them to was like, oh yeah. So kind of just listen to that on my own while still consuming, mass media music, right? So
Cool. So I'm also curious, like, there's obviously the period of time from like this interest to where you are now of doing music and sound stuff like full time. So
really,
like what are some like key moments like between then and now that like got you to where you are today? Like
yeah,
I know
yeah,
you mentioned that you were a hairdresser at one point before you went into
yeah,
this full time and stuff like that.
yeah. So I, spent a lot of time growing up in LA. My father is German, so we spent a lot of time popping back and forth, as well as to Utah. Um, so I was like getting a lot of different, I don't know, people and community and whatnot, after I like attended my first party. So we went with some friends to an event at the Orion, which is now the Globe Theater in LA, but it's a really historic, and it used to be super run down old venue, and kind of just fell in love with that community, and it was just so wowed that this existed. I mean, this is when LA was like just kind of a wasteland downtown, and there
Mm-hmm.
wasn't much going on. There was like a lot of vacant buildings and whatnot. So I just like, some of those friends, continued partying with them. And then like I would travel and I would be like, oh my God, is there a party? I'm in Utah all summer. Is there a party here? Made some friends through that. And then like as well, when I would be in Germany, is there a party here? Even my father would sometimes come with me out to those things, which was so funny. Um, but yeah, so just finding that community, and then trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I stepped foot in my first studio. I was probably 17 years old. I was like really overwhelmed, didn't know too much about it. Kind of started DJing around that same time, just noodling, nothing, crazy. Wasn't pursuing it too hard. Knew I had to afford to keep partying. So started doing hair. It was like a flexible job, and then started, performing more, and realizing it was a great job at that time in my life, because I was able to work a few days, DJ, go out, set my own schedule, and just like But then ultimately I realized it wasn't as fulfilling, and the thing I wanted to be doing was like making and creating and like sharing my art full time. And I would be like in between clients in the back, like digging for music. I would be like automating a track on my laptop in Ableton in the back of the salon, like the funniest things. And I was like, okay, maybe this stepping stone in my life has like reached its point, and I need to like just jump without a parachute into music full time.
Um, so I mean, you mentioned like the three like different cities. Like, what what sort of effect did like Utah and different parts of Germany like have like what effect did they have on you like in your creativity compared to
Yeah.
LA?
So, I mean, obviously lots of different sounds. So Utah at that time when I was spending, a back and forth moment was really heavily drum and bass. I kind of, found a lot of friends in that community, and we were doing a lot of like really cool events on the salt flats and things like that were a blast. But then, finding more of like a harder, darker industrial in when I would be in Germany, because that was more prevalent, and I just kept finding that there. And then, LA, the community I was with, there's some like DMB jungle heads, and then as well, like more dance music, style, like underground dance music at that time. And so I really was being influenced in so many ways. And kind of at that time, I was just like all in with electronica, and wasn't paying much attention to much like many other types of music. But
Mm-hmm.
that's since changed.
Yeah. Um, one thing that I think is interesting is that like you do music full time, but it's not like based entirely on like playing gigs or like releasing music through labels. So I'm just like curious, how did you go about developing like different sources of income? Because I mean, like what you hear about, from artists all the time when they're starting out, regardless of whether it's music or even like journalism myself, where it's
Yeah,
like it's always good to have like different sources of income. And so I'm just like, how did
totally.
you go about developing all of
I
those?
mean, it's really community, right? So, uh, producing for vocalists, producing and doing sound design for whether it's like little shorts for people, whether it's for fashion designers, whether it's like their little fashion reels, things like that. A lot of places need like royalty free things quickly. Um, so just like really developing my own sound library and sample bank of like just sound design stuff that I can grab from and be like, okay, they need 40 seconds of something to walk down the runway. Cool. Or like I just was on a call last night about there's a gallery I work with out of Salt Lake, and they showcase their exhibits. And so they need music. And they were like, can we commission you for another original piece? I've done some work for them in the past. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So it's really just realizing that you can't always pigeonhole yourself in just dance music. I'm talking right now with someone about scoring a short horror film, which really excites me. So just things like that, and just trying to make community in all realms of music and art. And just like I can produce, my own stuff as well. I can, share that and do that as well, and be like, do you like this? Do you want to sync place this? I think a lot of us forget that sync placement is a really great thing. And when something gets sync placed, like I had my first sync placement in a parkour video like 8 years ago. And then you keep, I know that's so funny, but you keep receiving that payment, right? So, um, you know, and if you're producing for vocalists and that gets sync placed in something or in a movie, I mean, that's like the ultimate, right? So can always work towards that. But
Mhm.
usually you'd ask for a like base rate, and then you would ask for your percentage. And I've spent a lot of time like curating my own contracts and what those look like, so that I am able, if something does land, you know, you throw enough darts at the board, one's going to land, right? So um, that, you know, I would be protected and compensated in like appropriate ways. So I mean, music business, big thing. I like went back to school um, for recording technology and media music, and how to take a music business class, and then a lot of that other stuff I had to learn on my own.
Cool. Thank you. That was a
Yeah.
very detailed description.
Yeah, I think it's important because we can all
Hmm.
make art all day, but you know, we have to feed ourselves and put a roof over our head and buy more synthesizers. So.
Buy more modules
Yeah.
for your rack for sure.
Yep.
um, what's like a really like cool project of like the ones that you've mentioned? You know, you mentioned like you're about to do this horror movie. Is there anything that like that like really sticks out as something you had a lot of fun with?
So I met one of my best friends because both of us were featured on the SoCal Synth Society like virtual thing right at the beginning of COVID, and I ended up producing last year her single. And I like have never worked with someone that I've just like aligned with so much. Like I've had tons of vocal sessions, I've recorded numerous like albums, but I like working with her, and like her being one of the first people after kind of everything was coming back that I was like bringing into my space, or we were scratching vocals here. She ended up working with a vocal um, engineer specifically, and then her and I co-produced together the track, and it was just really special. So just feeling that again, like the collaboration and the community, and how aligned her and I are on our views about community and telling stories through our work, and just really making meaningful work, you know, and it hasn't stopped, you know. Now her and I create on the regular. She was over here on Monday night uh noodling on my synth, you know. So it's just, we, when you find your groove with someone, it's like it's so special.
So, I mean, I definitely like that how, you know, you didn't jump to, oh, I did this cool project because the project was cool. You're like, this project was cool because I met this person, and now that, you know, it's just it goes deeper into what actually makes music really special. Is like, you know, of
Yeah,
course the product is special and even making it, but like the bonds that you can create and like the way that
totally.
you can meet people through it is what it really, that's why I'm sitting here, and that's why you're sitting here, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Totally.
uh,
Totally.
um you mentioned the SoCal Synth Society. Can you just like kind of just tell me a little bit about that? You know, like what are the goals of it? You know, how did you become involved? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So Travarsi and her wife, Space Racer, and a couple other people started it before the pandemic. And they, you know, would solder modules. They were just like creating kind of a community to learn and not feel intimidated with synthesis, and, you know, kind of the rabbit hole. And, you know, it can be daunting, like jumping into synths. Um, I mean, I met Traversy. She was one of the first people when I moved back to LA that I met at Ableton Loop Festival, and we just connected. She was telling me about all the things she's involved with, and uh, they, you know, started doing online virtual things as well, which kind of became like a showcase for female and non-binary artists. And um, then just, you know, they were reaching out to the community like, can you guys nominate more people? Can we bring more people into this family? Can we keep sharing other people's work? And, you know, it became having everything from panels and things that we would talk about and on YouTube to like interviewing the new artists. So it's really just a super inclusive space for like underrepresented um, people in the industry who are into hardware.
We're into hardware.
Yeah.
You know, so I definitely want to touch on like the more community aspects of it, but since it's been brought up and we can see all those cool synth slash aquarium animals in the background. I'm just curious, like when did you first start like working with synths and hardware and stuff?
Yeah. So right before I went back to school, I was like noodling in some synths. I had uh, my JX3P, which is like an older Roland synthesizer, and a couple Volcas. And I had super minimal IO. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna see what I can record. And then I just kept going down the rabbit hole. I took a synthesis class and just like kept like playing on the Moog there, and like just it just like unfolded so quickly to the point like I was like seeking out certain things and watching all the YouTube videos. Like when I get obsessed with something, I get like really obsessed and I need to know everything. And so um then it like became okay, semi-modular. Then it became like, oh, effects, like I want all the effects, like what effects do I want, and learning about all, reverbs and then different types of delays and all of that stuff. And then um learning semi-modular to now, having my Euro rack, so my ARP. So yeah, I think I having something tangible is so lovely and special to me. So I really just feel like more aligned with creating that way. I still do some stuff in the box, but I try, to create mostly with hardware.
Um, what is it like? Kind of like, how would you describe the experience of like when you're just in that zone of like pure like pure hardware creation where it's like it's not even for a project, you're just like doing your thing, with your many synthesizers?
I mean, it kind of sometimes just depends like what the project is, or if I'm just like noodling, sometimes like I'll just be like, oh, I'm gonna make a patch. And then like I'll be like, oh, that's pretty great. Like I'm gonna get some drums going for that patch. And then um, before I'm tracking everything in, and now I'm like, okay, let's like run it through the space reverb. Let's, and it like builds out that way. Or, sometimes I'm just like working on drums first. Like it really, I don't really have a specific creative method. Sometimes I have ideas and then I'm like, oh, let's get this vocalist in here. Or I'm like, oh, there's a vocalist I want to work with and they already have all the songwriting and stuff done. And so we'll just make like a kind of scratch beat to get the vocals tracked, and then I'll build the song out. Or, there's a lot of, I think just being able to jump in at any point is really helpful in collaboration or in writing your creativity into the flow state, right?
So it's just like having an attitude of flexibility, of not like being, not putting yourself like in the box, haha, pun time.
Yeah.
But so that just like that's like the way it helps you. I'm just curious because like there's some people who like work really well on like schedules and like having a specific routine and stuff, but that's not Maude Vôs.
That is not me. That is not me. Like I am erratic. I have like a lot on my plate. And it's like I work a lot with other people. So it's kind of just for me, it's like scheduling things with people and then like figuring and scheduling my own time for things and creating my own deadlines in my head. But also like I think a lot of times like, we sometimes have self doubt or are like a little stuck and feel like, oh, I don't feel creative. But I think that's just something we tell ourselves. I'm sorry that the construction is coming by. You can probably hear it. Was really crossing my fingers that they weren't going to be beeping, but they're trying to join us on a synth jam. So,
Okay.
but just okay, now I've lost my train of thought, but yes, trying to find, adequate scheduling for things for me is really important. So calendaring things and like sticking to time frames or setting my own time aside for things like that is helpful for me.
Cool. One thing I wanted to ask you about too was the new track on Desert Hearts Black,
Yeah.
Opulence,
Yeah.
Superheater. So I mean, just like, how did that track come about from the way it was produced to, getting into, like, becoming, meeting the Desert Hearts people and stuff like that?
Yeah. So the track is called Opulence. I've used like the JX3P, a lot of the Volcas. The main like keyed line is from the Volca keys. Those little things, I swear, they're like one of my favorite machines to this day. Analog, like $100 and lush as hell. So, um, yeah, and then just TR8 on the drums. And I started that with just writing the melodic parts, like it didn't have drums. But it kind of has just like a royal feel to it. I think the whole song kind of feels like a little lavish, even though it's like made on like pretty um, basic equipment, I would feel, you know. Um, but yeah, I met all of them through my partner Tiff because she's like was curating Twitch nights for them during the pandemic, and played one of those nights. And then people were so lovely in the comments; it was pretty amazing. And I sent them over a few songs, and they liked that one. And um, yeah, so wanted to put it like since I'm a new artist, I guess they like first release a lot of their newer artists on like the VA comp, and then can go from there with an EP. So
Have there been any discussions about an EP?
yes, Marbs did ask, said he's all ears. So
Ooh, very cool. Um, One thing that was interesting, you mentioned that it was made on like quote unquote basic equipment. So like, would you say that for someone who would want to get started on synths, like would you recommend like not even really worrying about having like the biggest and most expensive? Like you could really do a
totally.
lot with some like
You can do,
more.
yeah, I mean, the industry now, like you can do so much with just like a lot of littler pieces of gear. And like sometimes less is more, and you don't want to overwhelm yourself. Like before I even got into modular and Euro rack, I had like a Mother 32, a No Coast, and like the Volca modular. And then I was like, okay, let me like get all of these down with the sounds that I want to create on them, and then I'm gonna jump a little harder, because I think sometimes we can like overwhelm ourselves, or like having constraints is good in new topics or new like avenues of learning. So I always suggest the Volcas because most of them are analog. You can learn a lot of different types of synthesis. You can learn, like I said, modular synthesis. You can learn FM synthesis, like, and then they're laid out in just really like work friendly ways. You can like patch a MIDI controller in there so that you don't have to play their keyboard on the tiny thing. So, but they sound really good. So,
Hmm. And that's the most important part at the end of the
yeah,
day.
yeah,
um, something else that you've done on your own, or one of your own activities of late, is you started your own label called Delusional Records, which is just put out today,
yeah,
September 29th. Its fourth release, right?
yeah, yeah,
Very cool. So I mean, just like, tell me a little bit about that. How, like, what are like the intentions behind the label? What are some
yeah.
long-term goals? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so I started the label with my partner Marie Nix. She's a DJ and producer, pretty well known in LA. Super amazing curator as well. I met her when I was booked for by Travarsi for a live hardware night. That was her night, so kind of rad little meet. But and that was pre-pandemic, and we just stayed friends. I sold her a drum machine, like we just kept talking. She would send me stuff she was working on, and because she was like starting to produce then. And I was just talking about having space to like release art and curate community around like inclusivity. And one of like our main uh, values is, creating like a 60/40 where women and non-binary artists are the 60, and then the 40 as men, and just creating, a diverse group of releases as well. So, we are trying to really break the, industry that is 90+% white male. And just trying to like share a lot of different music from different parts of the world and the country, in a super inclusive, meaningful way. We have our resident artist who's named Alex. She's also queer and a female, and does modular video synthesis. So just trying to like bring all the things together that we love and that we stand for, and share art and create a space in that way.
Cool. That is very admirable, and I'm very much in support, as you know.
Thank you.
Um, and a common theme about this throughout this entire interview was this idea of community. You were part of community. What got you interested in music was this idea of community. Now you're creating your own communities and all this stuff. So I'm wondering, like, how did this, like, being a part of this community, like, help you become like confident in your own queerness?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think the first time I felt like I could be me was, around other queer people in the electronic music community. Like, I'm super grateful to have, like, when I was 16, 17 years old, have like a few older friends who were queer, who kind of were my queer parents, I guess, if you will. And um, just like took me to my first pride, like told me I don't have to be in the closet, like accepted me, and just having that like love and support, like as a community, and feeling embodied in those spaces, like I felt like I'm home, like this is so great. And I mean, let's be real, house and techno is black and gay. So um it's like it's crazy where it's gone, but its roots are black and gay. And so just feeling like finally I found a place where I feel aligned with, and I can be me, and that I'm home, is so lovely. And creating that as well for the label is, why that's so important to us, because I know how difficult this world can be. I have worked in many rooms where I am the only queer person, the only female, so it's a difficult road to navigate. And so just maybe creating that like home space for other queer, gender nonconforming, and women, you know.
And well, thank you for sharing that part of your story.
Yeah.
um you know there's a lot, like, there has been a certain amount of progress that's been made for inclusivity. Well, again, like, kind of like you said, it went in this other direction away from its roots, and now it's like slowly coming back, but it's certainly not, fully inclusive and fully open just yet. So I'm wondering, what do you think that the industry can do as a whole to help, like, spread and continue to grow those values?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes from like booking women and non-binary artists as headliners, not supporting artists. I think it's not just booking a token queer, black, or woman on your lineup as, you're like, check the box, I did the thing, right? It's taking your time, if you're having a space, whether it be a label, a party, whatever, to do your own due diligence, to find artists in your community, and like help support those groups. And I think it goes as well beyond, like in my own practice, I've mentored, and I used to work for a nonprofit where I mentored incarcerated youth and alternative high schools with the Ableton Push Initiative, and just taking this art and production to other communities that don't have the access to it. That, like, I bring women into my studio for free and let them play on my gear, mentor them through tracks, help them find their way with production. It's daunting, it is. And um but just, like, teaching them the tools, like giving people the tools that they probably don't even know exist to create that art, because a lot of us didn't have those opportunities. Like, maybe there is music production in people's high school and whatnot now, but um, it's a lot more difficult for us to have found those spaces, and a lot of us find them a much later. I know for me, all of my mentors have been male, and there were never any female mentors for me. Like, I looked, it was so difficult. Even in going back to school, my theory teacher was the only female in my whole program. So I never had a role model. So I think it's like also being role models, and it's on us, but it can't always be on us. It's not always the responsibility of the women, the queers, and the Black folks and people of color to tell and educate the rest of the community on how to show up for us. Like, they need to take the time to do the work, right? To book the artist, to do their own due diligence, to hire people that are in that community.
Do you see like more of that happening now than in the past, or do you think that's still like kind of at the same rate? Because I mean, I would certainly agree with you that for the most part, it's queer people who are feel more comfortable being louder versus like, straight cis males like actually stepping up. It's more just the people who are already in the situation like being more vocal about it. That's my impression. So I guess I'm asking what your
Right.
impression
Yeah.
is.
And I mean, it's exhausting at times, right? And so I think we have to be vocal. Like, I have to advocate for myself, because a lot of the times no one is going to. Like, I've had to learn that. Um, it's a tough thing, but that's why we are loud. That's why, for some of us are not, and but some people just are like, oh, I just want to make my art, put it out there. But, like, I think it goes, to the digging deeper, like stacking your crate with a variety of artists. Um, sorry, that was my cat sneezing. But so I have seen some change, but at the same time, I've also seen a lot of these new lineups come out, and they have been disappointing. And I do think, like, people, the bigger promoters and whatnot, are being held accountable a little bit more. But I see a lot of undergrounds that are not, and I'm not going to sit here and throw salt, but I see it. And it makes me even be like, do I even want to be involved with that if they're not bringing an inclusive lineup? Because it's like, this is all energy, and where we invest our energy, time is so sacred. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
where I give of myself, like, do I even want to be your token person? Do I even want to, every 6 shows you book a Black person? Good job. No, no.
Mm-hmm.
So I still think there's, like, much work to do.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I like what you said about like energy because I feel like that could be a tough decision for people in that sphere because it's like, say somebody like loves DJing with all their heart and that's all they want to
Right.
do, but by like, they don't, but they're faced with a similar conundrum of they don't want to play into these people who are like really, I mean, I view it as irresponsibility. Like if
Totally.
you're if you're in a big city, like playing to a big scene, you have the responsibility to properly represent this culture,
Yeah.
and if you don't, and it's like it's not even that hard from my from not from my perspective. It's like we have Spotify now and like you like you
Really,
just search like a few little searches and you can find so many artists who, and it's like because that's the whole thing, is it's not a lack of people, right? it's
totally.
it's
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 not.
that it's the cult, it's the patriarchy that has made it seem like they're in like the minority or whatever, but they're really
Totally.
not. It's
They're
like
not. You're
they're not,
absolutely right.
and so like, but yeah, just like I'm thinking about like that conundrum of that, just me must be like really hard, of just like fuck, like I don't want to support these irresponsible people, but I don't want to give up my passion, for what I'm doing.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely. I mean, for me, it's like that's a hard thing, but I do my own due diligence and I'm like, are these people misogynist? Are these people like working for inclusivity? And go down my own list of values. And if that aligns, then I will give you my time. And if it doesn't, I won't. And I don't know. I get it's also maybe for some people a financial thing, and there's a lot of things that play into capitalism. And I just think, at the end of the day, we have to just build our own new, build it anew.
stand-up comedy or sitcoms.
Oh, stand up comedy.
Okay.
Sure.
uh, I know the answer to this one already, but dogs or cats?
Cats. I love all animals. I am not vegan. I love all the animals. I do not kill spiders. Like I love them all, but we know I have a special connection with my cats. I'm surprised they haven't joined us yet for this interview. They usually walk all over everything, but if you want to see my fur babies, they're usually all over my Instagram.
At the sound sculptress, there you
Yes.
go. Festival or club?
Oh, probably festival.
um Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
uh
Always.
bi- Always.
Always. Maybe
um
like an evening tea to like go to bed, but I the coffee, yes. I am obsessed.
you get that, what's it called, chamomile is my favorite nighttime tea.
Or passion flower. That one's
I've never tried that. I will have to try it.
put you right out on that note. Here we go. Cheers.
um so Biggie or Tupac?
Biggie.
Okay. Ramen or pho?
Oh God, that's so hard. I love noodles. They're my favorite food group. So it's like, do I really have to pick? But we will go with ramen.
What's your favorite ramen spot in LA?
Well, there's like the vegan ramen spot called Ramen Hood. So
Mm.
that's like in the like downtown market spot. They make
uh
a
Grand Central Market.
yeah, yeah. They make a really good vegan broth. So
Cool. Pizza or sandwiches?
pizza.
Snow or beach?
Ooh, this is like my heartstrings are so pulled because Utah and like Europe, all the snow, but then the beach here. But oh man. I think I'm gonna have to say like the snow because the mountains are seriously so magical to me.
I love the mountains as well. Where was I? If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Oh my god. Like time travel probably.
Where would you travel to in time?
Oh my god, the 80s.
Duh.
Like the early 80s when it was like, starting to be dancey but still kind of psychedelic.
Share.
Yeah, love me some Cher. I was engineering some vocals recently and we were going pretty hard on the auto tune. And I was like, oh, we just made like, a Cher track.
I mean, I'm pretty sure she's still. I was like looking at her Wikipedia the other day, and it says she's been touring for like 60 years, something crazy. Like
How?
she's
How?
she's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, House or techno?
Techno.
Um, Drum and bass or trap?
Oh, drum and bass.
That's not a hard one. Pop or hip hop?
Hip hop.
What is your favorite color?
Usually like green or orange.
Um, what's it called? Where am I? Flip flops or shoes?
Sneakers, yeah. All day
Uh,
sneakers.
all day. Finish this sentence. Before I want to die, I want to.
Oh shit.
Did I say before I want to die?
Before I want to die.
Before you die. What?
Before I die. Oh. Oh my gosh. I don't know if I have a bucket list like that. It's more goal oriented, but before I die, I want to see the aurora borealis. I mean, I know I could do that tomorrow, but it's got to be proper timing. I've got to freeze my ass off. There's a lot of things that I have to mentally prepare for.
That's a definitely a good choice. And the last one is, what do you have a guilty pleasure TV show?
I mean, I love cartoons. So I love Bob's Burgers. I've been into anime lately. I've been watching Demon Slayer. Um, but yeah, I love animated things because I feel like they're little realms that I get to be taken away from into, and like just whisked away from this reality and join somewhere different. So
Have any cartoons like? Have you ever watched a animated something and then just been like really inspired to hit the studio?
oh, totally. I mean, and in general as well with movies and things like love like a lot of psychedelic horror. I love a lot of sci-fi scores like Johan Johansson scores. So yes, of course. I mean, I think that's why I pursued one of my degrees in media music because I just love the places that sound can accompany like animated or film.
Cool. That was the end of the speed round questions. Thank you so much for taking the time for the interview.